Okay. So we are recording. Welcome to Jericho Girls Gather. And tonight we are talking about breaking down walls between heaven and earth. Do we actually have walls that separate us from heaven or from God? And Bill Clark is here tonight to tell us about how that is possible and how we can break those walls down. So Bill Clark is a retired retail executive, and he led all sorts of teams at international food and drug retailers. In 2005, he suffered a stroke, a massive stroke, which eventually led to losing his life savings, including his business and homes. I can relate with that, Bill, because in the downturn, we lost a lot too. And I'm sure a lot of people who will be watching later on YouTube will be able to identify that. There are so many times when I talk to people about losing stuff in 2008 that can totally relate. So your testimony will go on beyond tonight just with the Jericho Girls, because it'll be on YouTube as well. Bill says but they say when a door closes, God opens a window. I love that. And that's what happened to him. God opened his eyes to 4 principles for living life to the fullest, which he calls the key to hope, H-O-P-E. His presentation is based on his book, My Path to Heaven on Earth, How I Lost My Life and Found Hope. Now Bill is knocking down the walls between heaven and earth, and I want to show you his book here. I read this when Bill and I met through Don Otis, our publicist, and he sent me a book. And I'll tell you, I not only write in my pages, I don't know if you can see that with the glare, but I'm an active reader, so I have the pages are tabbed, like, you know, all sorts of tabs and folds and everything in here. And I've got all sorts of quotes that I go back to and look at for inspiration. So we'll get you in touch with Bill Clark if you want to get one of his books. And I'm telling you, you want to get one of his books. I read it every morning as a devotional, and it just so spoke to my heart. So we'll get you in touch with Bill at the end of our meeting tonight. And we also had some winners, because last Thursday I had some major technical difficulties where I could not get into Zoom, which was a divine appointment Bill and I were talking about, because there were ladies who couldn't be here last Thursday that could be here tonight. So we feel like it was God's calling to redo this tonight. And we did a little drawing. And so Lynn and Lois and Carol and Gail all won a book from Bill. So those are on their way. I will get those to you. So please, you can also get this on Amazon, or you can reach out to Bill. And it's a great book, My Path to Heaven on Earth. So without further ado and taking up any more time, please welcome Bill Clark.
Thank you very much, Donna, and hello to everyone on the call, and thank you for rearranging your schedules to be able to join us again this week. I sure appreciate it. Now, let me explain HOPE. HOPE is an acronym that has 2 meanings. It stands for Heaven, Our Promise on Earth is one of the meanings, and then each of the letters of HOPE I'm going to explain, which are what I call the keys to hope. So Heaven, Our Promise on Earth is this feeling that I have that through the keys and living these principles, I'm beginning to experience some of the joys of heaven while on earth. But it's not heaven, of course. I just want to emphasize that. That'll be way better. I mean, we're still going to face our challenges here on earth, but I think using the keys, it enables me to be able to face all the challenges of a stroke and loss of financial strength and all that. So I'd like to get into really the meat of it here in just a minute. But again, I'd like to describe a little bit more what heaven on earth is. And I already said it's not heaven, but it's a joy that only our Lord can give, a peace that only comes through faith in our Creator. And I can't describe it any better than what Psalm 23 does. And of course, that psalm talks about still waters and green pastures. And for me, I just think about a trip I took to Estes Park a number of years ago, and my wife and I were up in the mountains. I don't know how many of you can relate to this. I was talking to Lynn, and she could. We were up in the mountains just driving around. We hadn't hadn't seen the mountains before, and we found this beautiful little stream, and I said, let's just stop and sit by the stream for a little bit. Let's enjoy God's creation.
Mm.
And from ever since then, that's my picture of heaven on earth, boys, sitting there by that stream. Talk about still waters and green pastures. It was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe all of you can find your own Estes Park, which that peace that only the Lord can give. So how do you find this peace, Bill? How do we find heaven on earth? Well, that's by using the keys. First letter H stands for holiness. And it's just, I like to say, grab all the grace you can get, because it's the fuel that keeps you going. I think it's the grace from God. How do you get this grace from God? Well, with attending services, in my case, Mass, being a Catholic, Bible studies, faith sharings, reading the Bible, you know, all those kinds of things will help you get your big H. And I send a little workbook along to Donna that I think she's going to forward on to you later. And one of the things that it says in the workbook is, if you want to use the keys, write down your goals for each thing. You know, they don't have to be big goals, just little steps. So do a little self-examination and say, ask yourself, how you doing on your H? Is it a big H or a little h? So little h, what can you do to add to your life to just get a little bit more grace, get a little bit more of that fuel to keep you going? All right, let's move on to the O. That's a focus on others. You can always find someone, no matter how bad off you are, you can always find someone worse off. You know, here I was suffering from a stroke and getting wheeled around in a wheelchair, but I went to therapy, and what did I see? Some little kid in the same boat as me in a wheelchair. Apparently, it must have had some major event. Thought, well, geez, I thought I had it pretty bad, but I mean, a little kid can't run and play like I did. He's got it worse than me. So I think that's one of the reasons we need to focus on others. So how do you focus on others? Well, you can start by praying for others. So when I started seeing things like that and really started thinking about a focus on others, I would immediately say a little prayer for that person. Oh, I had one other point I was going to make here about focus on others. Did God put someone in your path today that you didn't notice?
I love that.
Oh, the beggar in the street, or maybe it wasn't even someone that wanted money, maybe just someone that needed a little pat on the back or a smile. You know, so watch for seeing if God put someone in your path today, and make sure you notice. That'll make sure that you're focusing on others. Okay, the P is for living in the present. Now, I don't know, I suppose some people are afraid of the future. For me, it was more trying to make sure I didn't slip into the past, because my past, you know, I lived a very, very good life as a retail executive with financial security and wonderful vacations and on and on and on. So my mind always wanted to slip back into the past. Well, you can only find God in the present. I had to keep myself doing that, so I developed a few principles and exercises for staying in the present. One is, I say, take the time to wander and wonder. And that was kind of like what I did in Estes Park. Let your mind wander just a little bit to what's going on around you and wonder at it. I do take the time now, if I'm just sitting in my chair out back and resting, and notice that butterfly that might be flying by that I never would have noticed as a busy executive, rushing from one place to the next. That's for sure. That helps me focus on the present. Maybe just driving to work and enjoying the sunrise. One other thing that I've focused on, and this is a priest said this. Well, actually, I was an altar server at our church, and the priest has many little prayers that he says to himself on the altar, and I had never heard them being, because I hadn't been an altar server. And at any rate, he said, Lord, help me to pray this Mass like it was my first or my last. And I thought, well, isn't that a good way to live your day? Try to imagine this was your first day on earth. I mean, look at the wonder of, talk about wonder and wondering. I mean, you would just be amazed at everything you see. Sometimes I see that amazement in my little 1-year-old grandson when we take him places. We took him to the circus. And boy, he was just, I mean, everything from the music to the clowns to, of course, the elephants. I mean, he was just soaking it all in like it was the first time he had ever seen it, which it was the first time he'd ever seen a circus. So live your day like it was your first day doing this or your last. I think another way is about living in the present. And the E is for evangelization. Jesus tells us over and over and over in the Gospels to spread the good news. Well, you might say to yourself, I'm not a preacher. You know, well, you don't have to be. Just tell your story. And that's the way I evangelize, is I just tell my story about how things happened to me and how I found God in this process. And so that's how I think each one of us can evangelize. Of course, we could offer to take someone to services with us. Just setting a good example for our children and our grandchildren is evangelizing.
Good point.
One of the wise scholars said, teach the gospel often. Use words if you have to.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
love
say that again? Can you say that again, Bill?
It's teach the gospel often. Use words if you have to. So in other words, just be a good example. Don't always have to preach. Just be that great example for your kids and your grandkids.
That's going on Twitter tomorrow, and I will quote you.
Well, it's someone, I'm quoting some great evangelist that said that. I don't recall the name, so it's not an original quote by far. But I will give you an original quote from my book.
Okay.
It has to do with trusting in God. And I think if I wanted to sum up all the keys, it's trusting in God. And I like to say, picture the two of us on a bicycle together. God steers, I pedal. So I don't know where we're going. He's driving this bicycle, but I'll just keep chugging along here, doing my best every day to get this bicycle up every hill. So it's like riding a bicycle. God steers, I pedal, and you have a choice. You can get dragged along kicking and screaming, or you can just sit back and enjoy the wild ride of life.
I love that.
I'd rather sit back and enjoy the ride. So you can put those on Twitter if you like. Those are Bill Clark quotes.
Okay, you got it. That'll be on tomorrow for certain.
Okay, thank you, Donna. All right, and that's, oh, I did forget one thing when I was talking about others. It was just something new I just picked up in the last couple of days. It's a quote from Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. He said that if I could lighten the load of just one person today, then I've had a really good day. Yeah. So that's a nice, good thing to think about for focus on others, because of course Jesus taught us about through him, your burden will be easy and your yoke will be easy and your burden will be light. I'm sorry, sometimes words get a little jumbled up in my head still, but they come out eventually.
You're good.
So
we're with you.
You picture that, you know, lightening somebody's load by having a little bit easier yoke and a little lighter burden. If you could just help lighten somebody's load today just a little, you know, maybe it's by that little donation to a beggar, or maybe it's by that kind word to someone.
I like that a lot.
And that's not a Bill Clark, that's a Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos, I got that one down too. That's good. Do you still have some lesson or?
I do not. No, let's wrap that up and go into the questions.
Okay. Before I want to keep recording, so I have a couple of questions for you before we get into like personal questions and stuff. But one of the things that really had stuck with me, or struck a chord in my heart, if you will, was living in the present. And I'm sure listeners who will watch this video later would want to know more about that, because in today's day and age, we're so busy with, Facebook, and I laugh about posting on Twitter tomorrow, but I will be on Twitter tomorrow, or running to the next appointment, or, our mind is somewhere else while we're visiting with somebody, whatever that is. It just seems like the world is on high speed, right? And with technology, it makes it easier to just keep running and running and running, and then not being present. And so when you said live in the present, no matter what your circumstances, obviously. So what struck a chord was, don't slip into the past. Don't let yourself slip into the past. And it reminds me of the scripture of, take your mind captive and make every thought obedient to Christ. And so I just wanted you to expand, if you can, just a little bit about how you do that, especially without getting into the, oh, I wish I would have never had the stroke, and, the self-pity stuff. God, why did you let this happen to me? And it's so easy to go back and reminisce about the past and how things were. So how can we pull ourselves or keep our minds obedient to Christ and not slip into the past or reminisce about what could have been, pre-stroke? I know you said, take time to wander, and that's good. Is there anything more? Because that was a point that really stuck with me.
Well, I think it's using all of the keys, because prayer helps too, certainly, very much so. If I'm feeling particularly down and I take the time to pray, it could really lift my spirits. It's that fuel that keeps you going. So I think using all the keys, and of course, it's the focusing on others as well. It takes your mind off your own problems when you look around and you see somebody else. Everybody's going through something all the time. Might be different than what I'm going through, but they're struggling with something, and maybe I can do something to help them. If nothing else, pray for them.
Yes. I know in your book too, and I'm trying to find the page because there's a lot of tabs in here. I found it because I tabbed it. Page 44, it says, you accepted your situation. And so many of us, I think, want to struggle with, for me, like, I can change it. I'll make it. I can do something about it. I've got this, God. But you accepted your situation. And I think that's part of living in the present, is saying, okay, I've had a stroke, and now I'm going to focus on, what's around me and how I can, look at good things in life. But I love how you accepted your situation. And I think acceptance is a big part too, I think.
Yes, it is. And we have such a great role model for that in our Blessed Mother Mary, how she just accepted her situation, as difficult as that was for her.
Right. Yes.
So I think about how the role model that she gives, or her husband Joseph gave, to accepting that situation.
That's a really good example, because Joseph, probably couldn't understand the virgin conception, and
yeah, that's a new one,
Yeah.
Come on, can't come up with something better than that?
Right.
I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't joke about that. My weird sense of humor.
Yeah.
You'll see in the book I have a weird sense of humor, and it'll come out in the book a bit.
Uh-huh.
And the book talks a lot, not only about the keys in more detail, but it talks about how God gave me the keys and how I discovered each key.
Yes, I remember reading that too. I love the example of accepting your situation by going back and reading some Bible stories about Joseph when he heard the news about Mary, and having to accept that, and then Mary accepting her, this miracle that happened. And she said something like, let it be done. I accept it. What you have for me, I accept, is basically what she said to the angel when she found out that she was going to give birth to the Messiah. So that's really good. So I will remember that when I'm having a slip into the past moment, or a pity party about, something that I'm going through. So that helps me a lot. The other thing I liked too, and I'm writing my third book right now, and I quoted you in it. and writing kind of around it. And I'm trying to find it in here because it's really good. It says on page 22, after your stroke, you went back to playing tennis. And you said, I could still play tennis, but I needed to resort to a different style of play. And I have written in orange in your book, I needed to resort to a different style of play. And that really inspired me to write about, looking at things differently. Okay, I had a stroke and I can't play tennis the same way, but I'm going to figure out a different way to play it, and I'm still going to do it. That really ministered to my heart too. Do you want to expand on that at all, or maybe tell us how it was for you learning to play tennis?
Well, thank you. Before my stroke, I was a natural athlete. I was a varsity basketball player in high school and varsity volleyball, and I could play any sport pretty well, just being born with that ability. And then after the stroke, it's just hard to get the old body working all together here to be able to do that as well as the mind. So what I had to do was go take lessons. And I took lessons from someone who specifically was working with the disabled and teaching them tennis. And so I learned a lot of the finer points of tennis. So that enabled me to be able to win matches by skill rather than just athletic ability.
Right. Yeah, you had to look at the game of tennis in a whole different way, just like you had to look at life in a whole new, you had to figure out a new way to play life too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And your wife, Donna, had a lot to do with that. You guys are still in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And
well, I like to meet with stroke survivor groups. Seems that a lot of the hospitals have them, and if anyone is familiar with one in their area, I would love to meet with them and give them encouragement.
yes, and we will get your contact information.
Yeah.
Or you can also, email me or contact me, and I will connect you with Bill. But we'll get that before we're done tonight too. So if there's anybody.
But the point I wanted to make was that you need an advocate, a really strong advocate, when you're recovering from something as serious as a stroke. Although I suppose you could build that case for a lot of things. Another thing that Jesus talked about a lot is Christian communities, the having others to support you in your faith, which is extremely important. And I belong to a faith sharing group to do that. But I think my stroke recovery, I wouldn't be here talking to you today if it wouldn't be for my wife, Donna, pushing me a little bit.
Yep.
Because I was exhausted from that stroke. And yes, I need a lot of sleep, but she would tease. She said sometimes I slept for 48 hours straight.
Oh my goodness.
So then I wanted to probably still sleep more, but she'd get me up, and I remember she'd walk me around this track. I'd like, come on. She's like, one more time around. Bill, you want to play tennis again, don't you? So it was hard work, a lot of hard work. But thanks to that wonderful advocate that the Lord gave me all that many years ago, 50 years ago.
I had a question. What was
Do you want me to stop recording, Lois? We're going to do Q&As here. I can stop recording in just one second.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Are you guys all okay with leaving questions on the internet?
That's fine for me anyway.
Okay. Lynn, are you okay with that?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll let people participate with us a little bit here. And then if there's something a little more personal, we can do that in the last few minutes of it. So, okay, go ahead. We're going to have, hey guys, we're having a free form tonight. You get to see what Jericho Girls is all about.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's good.
This thought just kept coming to my mind. What was your spiritual life like before the stroke? Did you have a strong...
Well, I was a cradle Catholic. I was born Catholic and raised Catholic. But to use a quote from the Bible, my faith had not been built on rock yet, for sure. So I developed a much deeper faith with the Lord through the stroke process, through the stroke and the recovery process, and the finding of the keys.
Did it happen like quickly? I'm sure your recovery was very, extensive. So did it kind of go along with the recovery, or?
The faith process happened through my faith sharing group,
Oh,
where we get together every week and we talk about the scripture readings that are going to be read at Mass that week. And we read them, and then each of us give our interpretations of what do those readings mean to us. And I was surprised at what came out of my mouth, quite honestly, because I hadn't had any training in any of that really. And our leaders started saying, Bill, you really have a lot of good things to say when you interpret scripture. You should start writing these down. And so I did. And I started writing down what a lot of the others said as well. And then eventually I looked at all those notes and I thought, well, some of this is pretty good. Stasha's right. Let's just turn this into a book.
okay. So, and your faith group was at what stage in your recovery? I mean, did you?
That was almost immediately. I mean, I had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the recovery process from a stroke is you go from intensive care to regular hospital room to outpatient care. To an outpatient facility, a live-in outpatient facility, and then you go from there to home, and then you keep going back for outpatient treatment, and all of that lasts a number of months.
Mm-hmm.
And the faith sharing group started about as soon as I came home.
Okay. So what did the hospital, were they instrumental in getting you plugged in, or did you just investigate and find it yourself, or?
No, it was something that was going on at our church, and it was something new that they were starting at the church, and so they were promoting it a good bit.
Okay.
Announcements at the church, and that's how I found out about it.
Wow.
Actually, I don't want to diss the hospitals, but I found basically that they're not extremely helpful. They weren't extremely helpful for me in stroke recovery. Maybe that was just my situation, but I like to explain that by saying that, in fact, they told me this. They said, what we know how to do is just get people back to doing the basic functions of life. How to cook something on the stove, how to comb my hair, personal things, all that kind of stuff. They got me to be able to move my left hand, which I couldn't do at all right after the stroke. I had to learn to walk again. That was the most scariest thing. That's something that's in my mind I will never forget. Because I remember the therapist saying, okay, now, Bill, you're doing fine. Your balance is better. You're going to walk now. And I just stood there. I said, well, I don't know how to do that. So he had to tell me what to do. And we walked for a week or two. And then he said, your balance is getting better. We're going to go down steps now. And I looked down those steps. It might have been the Grand Canyon to me, because I was like, there's no way. You expect me to walk down those steps? I'll fall. There's no way. He was like, no, you can do it. You're ready.
Wow.
Was there anyone to kind of tail on Lois's question? Was there somebody in your faith group or one particular thing that someone did that really helped you? Because I think when we're trying to reach out to others who are recovering from an illness or hurting in some capacity, we want to know what's going to best help. And if we say, let us know if we can help, sometimes the person who is recovering or healing doesn't really know what they need. So is there something that stands out in your mind that someone just came along and did for you that really made a difference?
Well, two things. Not in the faith group, but when I was in the hospital room. I mean, I was a wreck. My brain wasn't working at all. But when people came by to visit me or sent me flowers, I could feel the love. I mean, I felt it. It was just something you could feel inside of you. And so I always tell people, they say, if somebody's sick, do they really want bothered? They might just want to sleep. I said, no, go visit them or go send flowers. They'll feel the love. So I thought that was very instrumental. As far as the faith group, the leader, her name is Stasha. In fact, there's a chapter on Stasha. And the title of the chapter is Looking for Someone to Catch Me.
Yes.
Because it's like standing on the precipice of those stairs, thinking I was going to fall. Well, I really was looking for someone to catch me in my life because I felt, I was falling so far. I was going to fall more. I hope someone can catch me here, put me back on my feet. And so that wonderful lady there deserves all the credit for that.
That's good.
You know, Bill, when you're talking about falling, I was just thinking about that because I don't know, sometimes I have like dreams where I'm falling, which is really scary. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like you're falling off a cliff or something. But sometimes in your life, you might feel that way because I think we live a lot of times under kind of an illusion of control, which we do have decisions we can make about things, sure, but I want to, with my life, want to let God have control of that. But I always think about with falling, what God has encouraged me with, and this might be in your book too, is just fall into grace. That's really what you fall into. It's like his arms, they're always under you. He's going to catch you. He will. But it's just he'll cause you to live that out in really practical ways, as he has with you, for sure. A lot of ways.
He's always reaching out to us, Lynn.
Yes, he is. Yep. And always holding on to us. And I'm so thankful that sometimes he just gives me an image of just being held by him, and he's like, you're not going to like fall like an egg and break on the floor. He's like, you're not going to do that.
Just trust him. Everything that's written in the gospel is true.
Yeah.
There's a passage about, I feed the birds of the sky, don't I? Well, how much more important will you be than the birds? And there was a time when our business had failed, and I was trying to get disability from my stroke, and it's very difficult to get. I didn't know you had to get an attorney and all that to get the disability, but I finally learned all that and got it. But there was a time when our business had failed, and I hadn't yet got the disability, that I was really wondering kind of where my next meal is going to come from. Am I going to have to go to a food pantry? I mean, I just, I hated to have done that. But fortunately, my wife is a good shopper, and she took the little bit of money that we had and went to Dollar Tree, and anything you could buy at the dollar store became dinner.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he does feed you. I thought when I read all those lessons before, I thought, oh, come on, really, but you can believe it. I saw it happen in my life.
Yeah.
In your book, you say that we must search for God's plan because of free will. We must search for it. So how do you see God's will playing out in your life, and then maybe share where you're at today and what you see looking forward? Because it sounds like you've got a lot of plans and a lot of hope for the future.
Well, the neuropsychologist told me I could never go back to work as an executive, that the brain damage is just too severe. And so I tried several times, and darned if that doctor wasn't right, I couldn't do it. So now I just trust completely in the Lord and take every day the way it goes. And we were able to get the disability, and now that we've got a little older, Social Security, and so we can live off that. And I work a little part-time as a cashier at Dick's Sporting Goods. Nice. I think sometimes about, geez, I used to run 300 stores in 5 states. Now I'm working this little job as a cashier. Talk about a humbling experience. That's another thing the Bible talks a lot about, is being humble. So, maybe I need smacked around a little bit that way to become humble. So I'm very happy living the way I am. I certainly have a lot more balance in my life now than when I was a busy executive working 7 days a week, most weeks. So I'm just happy with what the Lord has given me, which is 12 beautiful grandchildren, 4 of them right down the street from where I live. So I get to see them quite often, a little 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. In fact, the 3-year-old has another bedroom in our little house here. She calls her bedroom. It's got dolls in there and everything that's her stuff. And she stays here quite frequently, and we're so glad to have her. So I'm just living life every day to the fullest, trying to practice the keys and seeing where God takes me next. And with Donna's help, I had someone help me market my book, and we didn't sell a whole lot of extra books, a few extra, although this came about through that. And so since I wasn't making any money off the book, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to stop looking for places to speak about the keys to hope, because it's not turning into profit. And then I kind of smacked myself around a little bit. I said, wait a minute, Bill, one of your keys is evangelize. It doesn't say evangelize if there's a profit. It just says evangelize. So I'm going to go on about trying to find speaking engagements and spread the keys to hope, because maybe I can lighten one person's day by maybe something that I say will really strike a tone with them and it'll help them lighten their load just a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
And then that's been a good day for me.
Mm-hmm. And you're investing in the kingdom too. We talked about that, and you will be amazed. It might be a couple of years from now when you get an email from somebody that says, hey, I read your book and it saved my life. It saved my life. I had no hope and you gave me hope. So I want to encourage you to continue on. Book sales, it's not just us little guys, even the big guys. It's hard to sell books now. There's so much competition out there, and it's all about just getting your message and building up that wealth for the kingdom. And you're doing that so beautifully. I love that about you. And it will pay off. It might be heaven. Your head will be so heavy with crowns that you might not be able to hold it up.
Well, let's hope for that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Is there anything that you want to tell somebody who might be watching to encourage them or inspire them if they're in the midst of healing or something very traumatic in their life, a job loss, a divorce, loss of a child? Is there something, we've had the keys or whatever, but anything you can tell them to have them hold on to hope?
Find a support group that you can talk through things with and that can help give you ideas and support to keep you going. And there's, not only does it have to be maybe something local through your church, which many of them exist, or through the hospitals, but there's so much online nowadays as well that you can find for support. So find a good support group, and then write down your plan for practicing the keys. Because it just won't become something you'll do unless you have specific action plan. They don't need to be huge steps, just tiny little steps for each key, that something that you think you can do a little bit better as you kind of examine yourself relative to each key, so that you're sure you're actually getting out there and practicing the keys.
Yes, that's really good. Yes, and get the book to My Path to Heaven on Earth, because that's going to help you break down the walls that blocks your path to finding joy and peace with God while we're here, and creating a heaven, if you will, on earth, despite our situation, because we live in a broken world.
Thank you for that commercial, Donna. And the best way to get the book is by writing to me on my email, which is WM Clark, WM, which is abbreviation for William, WM, and it's Clark, CLARKE, @gmail.com. Send me a little email if you'd like to get the book, and I'll write back to you with my address where to send me a check. And I sell the books for $10 plus shipping and handling, which $12 is what I charge for, because that averages out to about that price, which I think you'll find is comparable to what they charge on Amazon, where it's also available, or on the Barnes & Noble website, which it's available. Yes. Unless you're a Prime member on Amazon, it's going to be about $12 for the book plus shipping.
And if you get a lot of profit for them, right?
If you get it from me, I make a little bit more money on it, which I appreciate that, but I'd also be glad to autograph it with a little personal message to you as well.
Yes, and some of our ladies are getting the book, and so, help Bill spread the word. Like I said, I use this as a devotional in the morning, and And just some of the sentences and things that Bill said just really spoke to my heart. So I know it'll bless you as well. So before we wrap up, is there anything else, any other questions that you guys have for Bill? Carol, did you have anything?
I could backtrack, and it's possible, Bill, that my sound connection was not very good, so I might have missed what you said. I was just wondering if you ever got so discouraged that you were ready to give up, and how you came out of that.
Oh, many times, many times. How I came out of it was mostly with the help of my advocate, my wife, you know, who would push me and poke me and try to cheer me up, do everything a wonderful spouse should do. You know, but then also practicing the keys because, you know, I have my good days and bad days still. Everybody does. And if I feel a little depressed, you know, I'm like, well, Bill, let's go through each key and let's just see how you're doing. Maybe you need to write down a little bit more of an action plan for each one. So then I go back to them myself. And Donna, sometimes you said you read the book as a devotional. Quite honestly, sometimes I go back and read it too, just to make sure that I'm doing everything I said in there.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions tonight? Lynn, you look like you had something, but no?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
I didn't know if it looked like you were gonna say something. Okay.
No.
Bill, give us your email address one more time. You can also email jerichogirls@gmail.com and I'll connect you with Bill as well. But Bill, give us your email again.
WM Clarke, CLARKE, @gmail.com.
Got it.
And
Yes.
not only could you write to me about getting a book, but I would be happy to make any additional personal appearances if your church would like to have me come and speak, or some other group. Particularly
Absolutely.
stroke survivor groups, I really enjoy speaking to, and I feel like I can help them a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well,
I don't charge for personal appearances. I just ask for expenses.
Okay.
And typically, you know, I mean, I haven't gone real far for them, so the expenses have been minor.
Yeah, especially if there's people watching from South Carolina, that would be great.
Yeah.
To get connected. So, and you know, I'm a connector, so I'll keep my ear open for you. And thank you for inspiring us tonight to keep going, to keep our hope. And no matter what we're going through, to just stick with those keys and to keep looking to God and to keep hanging on. There's a purpose for our lives. There's a purpose, obviously, for Bill's life too. He has become an evangelist now and is sharing the gospel and hope with the world. And so don't give up. Don't give up hope, and get the book. So thank you, Bill, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to, Carol said thank you too. I'm just going to stop the recording and this will be posted on YouTube.